first issue I've got is that I set up a live stream and I can't work out how to access it. So I think I'm going to put a post into the group to say where I am. So create a post, members only. Right. Let me see whether I can do that. I'm live now, but not on the link I originally shared. Oops. Right, proof. Let's see whether I can do that. So oh, Joan, you're watching. Hello, Joan. Can you hear me okay? It's not quite set up how I thought it was going to set up. If you could let me know whether you can hear me. Oh, fantastic. Oh, we'll get going then. We'll get going then. So, Joan, did you find me because you clicked the link I showed, or did you come and find me on YouTube? You can hear me and see me. That's brilliant. Okay, then I was going to post something on YouTube to say I'm not quite sure where I was. I'm got a notepad and pen here for things that I need to follow up. So the first thing I need to do is that I set up a schedule. Oh, does that work like that? Oh, thank you. So from my end, I set it all up, and it's slightly different doing it on my laptop to my phone. And when I came to go live, I couldn't quite work out what I pressed. So I thought I was creating a brand new video. So I need to double check that. It kind of seems pointless to me going to the effort of scheduling it if I then can't access it that way. But let's get going. So the purpose of today's video is purely a test run to see whether I can be more professional when the doors open and we get more members in the group. So the first thing I'm testing is I'm actually wearing my microphone. I've worked out how to plug that into my laptop, just so if I want to move around a little bit, I can without sort of projecting my voice. So that is job number one. I can give myself a tick for that. Number two, as to where I actually go live, I'm still a little bit muddled about that. So what I'm going to do, we said we would do a little sample class. And as I had the irises left over from a project that I was doing earlier in the week, I thought, as there'd been interest, that I would do my version of how I'd create an asymmetrical triangle. So what I've got here is a little bit of prep. I've got a container here. I'm not quite sure whether I'm going to make the arrangement in this container, because inside I've got a slightly smaller container. I'm not quite sure what to do, whether I'm going to make it in this and then sort of dress up the arrangement by having it in a different pot. So I've already pre-shaped my flower foam. And you'll be saying to me, but Julie, I thought you were going foam free. Yes, I am going foam free. But for the purposes of this video, when I wanted to do a specific arrangement, a shape, one of the flower arranging, the backbones of flower arranging, I just couldn't quite work out how I was going to do that foam free. I did think about using the Acra wool, but to be honest, I've never used it before and I didn't want to practice live on air. I need to practice that separately off the camera. And then I thought I could have done it with a pin holder in the bottom and then the chicken wire on top, but I thought it would, it's just too much pressure trying to cope with the technology and cope with change mechanics wasn't quite the thing to do for settling my nerves. So I've gone for my flower foam. This is the brown foam. And it's the biodegradable, although I'm still not massively convinced that it is purposefully biodegradable. I think it still takes about 300 years to degrade. Ah, yes. So it's confirming. So yes, this is my equivalent of the little, what we might call the square round bowls that we use in floristry and flower arranging. And I thought, well, if I could use the flower foam, I didn't want to then use more plastic. So I have still got some of those bowls. I think it's sometimes quite nice, isn't it, to make an arrangement in the container that's got a little bit of beauty to it rather than just having the functionality. And I thought if I didn't like the stark white, I would then put it into my bunt tin and to disguise it a little bit further. So I guess I may well be teaching you to suck eggs when I come and soak my flower foam. So you'll notice that I've not talked you through that. I'm interested to see as well, when I play this back, you know, how well you can hear me, how well you can see me. And I can only do it from one camera angle, which is the angle from you watching on the laptop. So it's not like Zoom Flower Class where I switch between cameras across the top here. So that will have an impact as well on what I can teach. So you're saying there, I think I will always, yes. It's just whatever you want to do. I think it's just a matter of doing what suits you, but yeah, having half an eye to, you know, we want to be environmentally aware, don't we, and things like that. And I'm sure when we look back about using flower foam, you know, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we will wonder why perhaps we ever used it to begin with. But change comes slowly, doesn't it? So what I'm doing here is I am chamfering the edges off my flower foam. Just with using my table knife, I'm ending up with these little wedges on the side here. And then I need to tape everything in place. So you'll see that my flower foam is sticking above the edge of the container. It's sticking up quite a way above the container, only because I thought that once I've got it inside my bigger pot, that the sides of this are a bit higher. So that is why I have done it to look exaggeratedly high, because I want to put it in that dish when I've finally finished. Yes, the foam-free blogs. Yes, I must admit, I am really enjoying that as well. I think when you're learning something new, you have to practice it. It doesn't just come overnight. You have to really practice your art. And that's been what's quite good about the Julie and Julia flower arranging project, is that it is really getting me to think about things and how to do them, and you know, being reliant on the materials you've got, and how, whether it's the exactly, because you're always going to have different kinds of materials. So I'm just going to see whether I need to work out whether I need to bring you're stacked on a few books here, whether I angle it down a little bit. That might be a better angle, so you can see a little bit of me a bit closer up, and you can see my dish there. So what I do with my arrangements when I well, the arrangement we're going to be making, is that I know I need to travel across the width of the foam because I want to have my placement of stems. So the foam is rectangular and I rotate it. So I'm going to put my first stem in back here and my last stem will be back here. So I'm going to travel down with the placement of my stems. So now, having adjusted the angle of the laptop so you can see, I can't quite see the comments. You can see me struggling with my varifocals. So there we go. So what I'm going to do today is a practice. I'm probably not going to make a full arrangement. I haven't got all the greenery that I need. I'm going to come in with my irises first of all. So a little question for you. If you were going to be making this kind of arrangement, the asymmetrical triangle, so that's different from a symmetrical triangle. It's more of an L-shaped design, whether it goes that way or whether it goes that way. Let me know in the comments what perhaps you would use as your focal flower and what you think would be a good greenery, a good foliage to use as well. So while you're thinking about that, I'm going to lean over and get my irises out. So I'm planning on my irises to create, first of all, a straight line. And to do that, it's the odd numbers. So you need to be thinking 5 as a minimum. You might want to go up to 7. I think that would make it quite a tall arrangement though. I'm going to go for 5. My irises have got really quite chunky stems and they've got quite big flower heads as well. So I'm just going to randomly pick the first 5 out of my container. The others I will be using, but I will keep them in water to begin with. So what I am thinking here, normally when I make my sort of set piece flower arrangements and even my more modern pieces, I normally sketch out the outline first of all with my greenery. The reason I'm not doing that today, switching things up a little bit, is that, as I say, my irises are, I don't know if it's because they're new in the season, the first batch or whatever, but they've got quite substantial stems. So I'm conscious of the fact that if I have lots of greenery in my arrangement, first of all, that I possibly may not have enough flower fern left to put my flowers in. So the flowers are the most important for me. So I'm going to go straight in with my flower stems. So the way I'm going to do that is to tidy up or groom my plant material first of all. So I've got, you know, all the leaves that have gone a little bit discoloured, I'll be taking those off. And then when I've done that, I want to go through and just mentally in my mind work out which flower stem I'm going to have up tall and, you know, number their positions really from 1 to 5. Is 1 is the top flower and 5 is the bottom one. What order am I going to put them in? So the other thing I wanted to check actually before I can feel myself cowering there, I'm wondering whether I can actually watch myself on YouTube. So if I search for myself, can I watch myself? And then perhaps can I see your comments without, you know, squinting down the corners? So let me see. Now, I'm wondering whether possibly not, because I've made this a members only video. And I'm not a member of my own group. Perhaps I should sign up to become a member of my own group. I do have a tab marked membership. I can see it. So what I'm seeing now on my phone is I hastily renamed the video test video for class, which isn't the same name and all the blurb that I put in the link. So it's interesting if you press in the link that I'm going to I'm going to mute this. Right. So now this is the way that I need to read your comments. I've got your comments in front of me and I can see more clearly what you're saying. So I can see there the comment is linear foliage for the main placement, finer for filling in, focal flowers for the main line, spray carnations for filling in. Fabulous. Right then. So I will, when I see a comment come up on the side, I need to remember to look at my phone in order that I don't peer at the screen like this. Okay, then let's get going. So I can tick that off my list as well. So I'm going to go through my irises and see whether I've got one that is discernibly smaller, because that will be my top one. And if I've got one that is discernibly larger, because that will then be my bottom one. I've got a double there, so I'm going to keep that for the bottom. That is my smallest one. These 3 look about the same. So you can see how tall they are. If I put that on the table, you can't see the top of the flower at all. So I like to start with my top flower first, in order that I know that every other flower is going to be shorter. If you start with your bottom flower first and work up, you may discover that you actually haven't got enough length on your top flower, because it's quite nice to have a flower and a space, a flower and a space, a flower and a space. And you may find that you get into trouble at the top end. So I'm going to cut it so you can see it. I'm going to be quite generous with my cut off. These stems are incredibly long. They are, you know, fingertip to armpit long, so they are really long. So I've got my turntable in front of me. So I'm going to put this in furthest away from me, looking at the top of the head, because sometimes, of course, when you're arranging your flowers, and you sort of think, oh, I've got that straight, but then the head's a bit skewiff. So I would always say lock the sort of head position in place so you can see it, which may mean that the stem doesn't quite do what you think you need it to do. So it's so tall it won't fit on the camera there. So, and then I've pushed it in, but I'm sure, as you know, with a diagonal cut, you push it in, but probably it's only gone down this far. You don't want to push everything down to the bottom, and you certainly don't want to push your stems right the way out through the other side. So saving my biggest flower, my double, for right down the bottom, I then measure up. So you probably heard me say this loads of times before, but I shuffle the container towards me in order that, oh, this has got two little buds, but it had two little buds, and I've taken them off. And what I do is shuffle it down, and there, this is what I'm talking about when I want a gap. So my flower head's up here, and then there's a gap here, and then I want my next flower head. So I can eye up, and I want it cut about here. So look at that. I have cut my stem practically in half. And this time, in creating the line, it's not a straight line, it's a little zaggedy line. I'm going to come forward a couple of centimetres and just off to the side. So you can see, in fact, I think I could have gone shorter with that iris. When I spin that round, you're just catching that iris there with the second one a tiny bit higher. So then when I come in with the next flower, I think I need to be more adventurous with how much I take off. It makes me slightly nervous cutting loads and loads of length off my flowers. So sort of repositioning my flowers so I know that that I'm working from the back to the front, and this flower here is coming in a little bit off to that side. So can you see it's that line, but it's not one in front of the other. My line is about 2 centimetres wide, and I'm alternating either side of the line. They're coming back, so that's 3 in. Number 4 is going to be even shorter. Now, number 4, I might cheat with number 4. It's got a bend on it, which I don't really want. It's going to make it a little bit tricky, so I'm going to swap it out for us. I've got a straighter flower. I'm cheating. So I'm going to swap it out. Take off the excess green, a little bit of discoloured stem. And this one, can you see here, the front one here, number 4 is literally between thumb and forefinger. It is really quite short. So this one I place down again, just offset a little bit. So I've got my 4 flowers in a line, like that. So my iris is actually quite big, quite a large flower. So you could imagine if you had, 7 going up really high, you could make something that was really, really quite big. Yes, I'm coming forward a little bit each time. Can you see I've started at the back and I'm sort of marching my way down to the front of the flower foam, purely because when you're creating a line, you can't actually have all the flowers in the same place. And when it's a line, it's the flower arranging version of a line, which isn't straight up and down. It has this lazy S, this wiggle. Your eye moves in that tight zigzag. So I will say that if you ever see somebody, perhaps as a novice flower arranger, trying to do a line arrangement or the central line for a symmetrical triangle or an asymmetrical, sometimes it's too wide, it's too exaggerated, or otherwise it's too close together and the flowers just seem to merge into one particular, one column. So it does travel from the back of the flower foam to the front, to the point where when I come to put in my large flower, which now I'm cutting really short, I'm actually going to put this one into the front face of my flower foam. So let me I'll put it in first and then I will show you. So can you see from the side, those 4 were on the top of the foam, and my 5th one was probably partway between the chamfered edge of the foam and partway on that front face. And that's what starts to give you the profile that way. So we're making an asymmetrical triangle, but the asymmetrical triangle is made up of lots of triangles. we're going to have it looking triangular overall, but there'll be a little triangular bit here. There'll be a longer triangular bit there, but also in profile, you can see that I'm getting the angle of the triangle, and the outer edges of all those sort of designs, you never have any flowers coming beyond those outer edges. So I may well keep that piece of iris for future reference. So we've talked about it being an asymmetrical triangle. So what I would then do is decide whether you're going left or right, and then come out to the side. So you want one side to be quite shorter, and one side quite long. So if you like a rule, you know, you'd have a third of your length here and then 2/3 of it over here. Part of this, again, you know, how wide do you want to go? Entirely up to you. I would always keep one side, though, quite short. Otherwise, you're going to lose that asymmetrical look. And I think probably you could exaggerate the length of your line on this side. It's entirely up to you. So follow the rule, but, you know, bend the rule at the same time. So what I'm going to do here is this one that had the little natural bend in it. I'm going to make use of that one this time. Again, cutting it quite short, and I'm going to place this one in. In fact, I think I want it shorter than that, but I'm conscious with the iris, you've got this sort of package here, and that is where the second bud is coming out. And I'm just having a feel to see how far up I can cut my stem without it losing the solidity of the flower. So that is the outer extremity of that side. I'm not going to have any greenery or flower material coming beyond that line. If I want to add in more, I can add in more, but it's going to stop. I mean, not stop exactly on that line, but that is the notional line that you're working to. You're asking whether it would work. I would say yes, you can have your phone horizontally way around, but it doesn't give you so much width, so much depth to put all your flowers in. So I would say if you were going, you know, if you had slimmer flowers, you know, perhaps like a gerbera or something like that, I don't quite know which way to go around my flat. If you had a gerbera, it's quite a narrow stem, you could go across the narrow part of the foam. I just find it more less stressful if I go down the length of the foam, because I know I've got space to go and I'm not suddenly going to run out of space. So entirely up to you. And I would say that if you discover you've you know, got the foam the wrong way around, I would just power through it and don't worry about it. It's only you, after all, who knows which way your foam's gone round, because once you've finished, the nature of the flower foam is that you need to cover it up. So it's like, you know, I've got a rectangular block of foam in here in a round container. It's going to have an asymmetrical look. And at the end of the day, the flower foam just needs to disappear, do its job and disappear. So I don't think, you know, I wouldn't fret about it too much. So next up is my other wing coming out to the side. So I take another flower head, and this can be, I would say it needs to be twice the length of the one you put on the side. So again, I'm just visually measuring up. So that's about the length of the existing. And then if I move that like that, probably want it to be about that long here. And again, I will err on the side of caution and cut long to begin with. If I decide it just looks too long, and probably what I would want to do would be to stand up and walk away and judge it better. I'm a bit close to the arrangement here. I'm going to cut that a tiny bit shorter. Just feels like it's too long. And put that in there. So this is going in about 2/3 of the way up that piece of flower foam, and just until it's secure. So you can see I've got a nice compact placement there. I've got that one out there, big gap here. So that is telling me I need to put another flower here. So it depends on the type of flower you're using, how large it is, as to how many flowers you'll need to create this bottom section. So I'm going to put the next flower in. So this can be quite short again. And you need to be almost imagining, you've done that lazy S at the top, that there's a sort of subtle lazy S going through the front as well, from here to here to here to the end. That ends up as being 4 flowers, 1, 2, missing 1, 3, 4. So if it looks odd or awkward, it's because the flowers I've chosen are quite large. This would be a much neater and crisper look with less frilly flowers. I think it probably needs something there. Now, it probably needs something there. I will put it in, but you'll see what I mean, that because the flowers are quite full, they're starting to sort of meld into one another, and you sort of want them to be seen individually, but I will give that a go. So let me come back here. So 1, 2, 3. I think I could do with one recessed right down at that base. So I'm going to cut one really short. So you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to aim about here. Can you see the gap here? I'm going to aim about there, but I have to bring it towards me to put it in because I can't see what I'm doing. And again, just the nature of the iris. Beautiful flower, but probably not the best for this sort of domestic scale arrangement. It probably would have been better for sort of a church pedestal. I am going to have to cut it down quite short in order that it sits where I want it to go. So again, sort of bracing, sometimes you need to brace onto your foam. Now, I can't get that in as low as I want. I'm going to cut off a little bit more and get it to push in. And the reason why, so it's this one here I've just put in. The reason why you want it really low is that you don't want everything on that same sort of plane. You don't want your eye just to go bam. You want it to, it's the in and the out which makes everything look more interesting. So I've got a basic shape. I think you can see it's got an upright, it's got a short section here and a longer section here. And then with my flowers, if I had more flowers, this would be your transitional flower, your in-betweeny size flower, Lisianthus, your spray carnation, which would fill in if you wanted to, that everything in that space. And the same on that side there. It looks a little bit like a yacht, doesn't it? A sailing yacht with one large sail and one small sail. Sometimes, though, you'll see people will fill in that whole side, but sometimes it's almost like it's got to scoop out. And again, that's just personal preference of what you want to do. I can see here that it's got quite a good outline, but I will need to add a little bit more support and structure. So I have got a few flowers to help me do that. And again, these are things from my garden. So it's the garlic mustard that I've got. So what I would do then is to support your main flowers, is adding in your greenery to give you more support to your flowers. So it's like I went alternately with my focal flower. I'm then going to go in the gaps with something else that comes through. Yeah, I think standard carnations would be a really good idea. Yeah, I would say standard carnations with a spray carnation would be a fabulous choice. And they're just it's an impactful flower, but they've got a nice round circle. You haven't got all this sort of shagginess going on. It's almost like with this arrangement, I feel like I'm arranging with lilies. They're so big and open. So I'm going to come in with my greenery here, measuring up and putting in. So what I normally do is I have a piece of greenery that is taller than my highest flower. You can't see it, it's too high. It's this much taller. And I just like that because it's sort of like, imagine if you've got a Mr. Whippy ice cream at the top and you've just got your hand and you've gone, so it just tapers off into a point. And that's what my greenery is doing there. I'll show you with the next one what I mean. So I'm going to come down. It'll be interesting to see how well this garlic mustard holds up. It's in a vase of water. It's been holding up really well, but I don't know whether it's going to like being in the flower foam. So here I'm going still quite tight to my line, and it's probably a bit wafty for you to spot on the camera, but I'm I'm mirroring, I should say, or shadowing the placement of my original focal flowers. And what I'm doing as well is saving the side shoots because I'll need those for later on. So I've got a piece cut visually to size and I'm working my way through. So the first piece went in behind that first piece of Lisianthus iris. And then my next piece is coming in. So it's getting that offset line a little bit. and then coming down. So now I'm coming down into the middle of the arrangement into manageable lengths. So that's, you know, a 1.5 stretch there, coming off to the side. So I've gone all the way down. A little piece there. It's quite a light, it's quite an insignificant piece of green, so I'm not sure if the camera will pick it up, but I have mirrored the placement of my first line of irises. I've gone straight down, and now I can come out to the side. So there's little side shoots that I cut off. I can have those trailing out to the side, and by luck, this one is just a little bit longer than my flower head, and then bring that in towards the centre. So it's, you start to bring these little linkages, these little bridges that are going on. And then coming out to the side, I reckon I can use some of these side shoots here. So my flower ends here. I can bring that out to the edge, and then you're sort of linking that back to the centre of the arrangement. So whatever you put on the outside edge needs to be brought forwards. And you can see here that if I turn it round, just bringing a few bits in closer, that it looks like the sort of weight, the anchorage of the arrangement is purely underneath the line. So that is my preference for doing it. I've got my line and my container is there. And then you get this lightness underneath where I haven't got any container. And I think that is what it gives it, as a lightness in look, that it's just got its roots and foundations directly underneath the line of flowers which are rising up. So I've gone down and across to both sides with my main flower and with my outline in greenery. So I'm just going to get rid of those bits. I've got a bit more green left, which I'm going to use up. So I can go down and cut this to manageable lengths. And I can use that to, I'm going to come out to the front, because again, I want to support that flower that came to the front, and just a little bit round the edges. I'm using here with the shorter stems is where I've got my bigger leaves. So big leaves are always handy to have because it covers up your flower foam. And I will just whiz that round while I have a look at the next comment. So again, I'm not sure the cameras can pick it up. I've got my green leaf in here, so it's just giving a little bit of solidity, and it is starting to cover up the flower foam. So yes, the white irises are quite a revelation, aren't they? Because we normally think of them as being the blue, but I'm not a massive iris fan, but I will say my head has been turned by working through my Julie and Julia projects. So it's, yeah, just nice to spot something else. I would say that starting with my flowers first, the reason I did my flowers first was because, these are rock solid, chunky stems. And I didn't want to get myself a lovely outline in green and then discover I had no place for my flowers. And I knew that my greenery was a much daintier size. So that is why, in this case, horses for courses, as I say. In this case, I went flower first and then greenery second. So let's come back to the beginning and have a look. So you are asking the question, well, as you know, I'm not a gardener, so I can't give gardening advice. What I would say, if I was advising you on what flowers to bring for this kind of arrangement, you want something that's got some length to it. So you want to ensure that at least some of your greenery is as tall in length as your tallest flower, because as you saw at the top here, and I will put it back later, my greenery is this much taller than my tallest flower. So if you've got quite long flowers, you'll need quite long lengths of greenery. I'm looking outside my patio doors now, and we've got some bamboo growing in a pot. That would be quite good because it's on the straight lengths. And of course, you can cut them shorter for the rest of it. But in terms of florist materials, it may be the soft ruscus. It's got a little bit of arch on the top, though. So you'd want to make sure it's sat upright instead of bending off. If you arrangement, but something that's got a bit of solidity, whether it's a big leaf or whether it's a bushier form, so you can put these down as the clumpy bits, to cover up your flower foam. So just to fill out a little bit, I'm going to rob Peter to pay Paul, or whatever these sayings are. I've got a tub of flowers here that you may well recognise from one of my Facebook lives, and I'm going to fill in a little bit. So I might just start off. I've got some Solidago, and that will look good with the yellow of my irises. And I can use the Solidago as a foliage, in effect. But you can see here, the Solidago has been cut quite short and it's quite bushy. So it's never going to look right. Oops, a daisy, pinging off the table there. It's never going to look right high up. It's too visually heavy. Prune down to the side. I might be able to get a way of using it from the sides, but really I'm seeing this as a filler flower and to supplement a little bit these sort of winged edges of my triangle. So I will turn it back to me and then talk you through as I'm going to go through this, what I'm doing, what's going through my mind. So first of all, I'm bringing the arrangement square back to me. That's another good reason to actively think about which way your flower foam is going, because you'll be able to visually check that you have actually brought it back to centre. So you're saying you wish you could grow soft grasses. I do know somebody locally who grows it as a hedge. So I think probably it is the space, isn't it, that you need rather than anything else. But I don't know which soil conditions it needs. You see me here, I'm just picking away at my Solidago. It's several weeks old, so I'm just sort of cleaning it up a little bit. And to get more placements out of it, I can cut down with my scissors. And that's a way also of sort of lightening the foliage as well, so it's not too clumpy and visually heavy. But the chunky bits here are really good for putting down low into your arrangement, because it disguises the flower foam as well. So anything you need to sort of distribute it evenly throughout the arrangement. I mean, you've even got that little sprig there. I can put that down in front of the first upright of the iris, and it just covers up the naked stem a little bit. I don't like to see too much straight up and down green stalk. So if I spin that round, and you see where I've put the Solidago down here and down here, and then if I repeat that from the other side, that I brought a little bit out here, but it stopped there, and ideally I want to bring it out to the edge. I'm going to cut off some of these side stems so that again I've got a light wafty piece of Solidago. We've talked before about not wanting things to be too heavy at the edges, wanting everything to fade away to a bud, and sometimes it just works just by like magic, and other times you have to manipulate or cut your greenery. I'm thinking I might have to cut off these two pieces here because they are rising up too much. They're going above that imaginary line I was talking about and changing the shape of my arrangement. So I'm going to trim those off, and I can reuse them. I can put them in on the other side just to complete that little piece on the other side, just to bring them out a little bit. And with my taller offcuts, I can have them starting to come out. Now here, I'll show you when I turn it around, I'm coming off to what is my left-hand side. But because those stem lengths there are slightly longer, they are starting to fill in that little triangle area. They're coming right across to here. And probably that's all I need. I don't necessarily need it to be a really crisp edge design. I just want it to be asymmetrical, so it's got more on one side than it has on the other. So I can see here I've got a little bit of a gap here. So again, I'm going to trim down my Solidago. I can have a little bit of Solidago in there. And just to supplement that corner there, remembering also to come out. Can you see at the profile, that's come out to there? So it's not a skinny design, it's got some width to it. So it's becomes more three-dimensional. But you can see around the back, it's very bare. So I've got to find a way of covering up that flower foam without it then spoiling the overall pleasing proportions of my asymmetrical triangle. I'm going to come up a little bit higher. I've trimmed off all the little shoots there, recut the stem end, and bring that in for a little bit of that yellow rising up like that. Now, what I need to decide again is whether that's too visually heavy just there. I might need to trim a little bit out. I might go just trim. So it's almost like, it's like a bonsai garden that you place it in, you stand back, you look about it, you think about it, and just think, does it just need trimming, manipulating? Does something need to be taken out? So you are in charge of your plant material. You want to get it to do what you want it to do. So that's my shorter side. I must remember that's my shorter side. I don't want to fill it out too much. So coming through. Now, if I was to look at this with a critical eye, I would say that my solidago, my yellowness, doesn't come up high enough. But that's always going to be an issue when you're using spiky plant material. It's just, if I hadn't cut this down for something else, I could have trimmed back and used some of that. But I think probably this is pretty much done. I've used two flower. I've used my focal flower and I've used my solidago as like an in-between flower. To me, it needs some more yellow up here, but perhaps I shouldn't draw attention to that. And of course, I do need to fill in the back. So I want to fill in the back with these. I'm going to use the solidago trimmed down. I just want that there to fill in. I don't want it competing with the overall look of my arrangement. And this would be where your bushy greenery would come in. It just does a job. Bing, bang, bong. Get it in there to cover up the back of your arrangement. So we always like to have the backs covered up. It's good workmanship. But ultimately, if you're making this for home and it was being pressed up against a wall, you could, take a few shortcuts around the back here. But I will just spend a little bit of time doing this because I'm sure that when I finish filming, I'm not actually going to do any more to it. So what I can do here is just, get it on its way. And when I turn this round, you'll see that it's much improved in terms of workmanship by covering up those bald spots of the flower foam. So we always do, don't we, as flower arrangers, want to have a look around the back, see how well everyone has finished off their arrangements. So this is the back view coming around. So it just fills it out a little bit. No one's going to see that, but it's the front that you want to see. So what I will do is I will take a photograph of that so you can see it more clearly against a plain background. But for me, that is the way that I would do my arrangement, slightly elevated off the tabletop. And it's this piece here. It doesn't quite touch the table, but you've got that sense of airiness underneath. And it does have quite an elegant look to it. And you'll have to let me know in the comments where you think you would use this kind of arrangement. Is it something you would normally have at home, or are you thinking it's more of a church flower arrangement, a flower arrangement for a function? It's almost like if you had a pair, they could be sort of bookends on a mantelpiece, something like that, or in a church window. I will be honest though and say that I don't often make an asymmetrical triangle for home use. I prefer to have other kinds of arrangements, probably informed more by what the flower's telling me than by the shape, setting out to do a set shape to begin with. So I'm just going to check for more comments. Yes, so agreeing with me, 2 of them in a pair. Yes, and the other comment there about keeping it narrow at the top. So I would say if you're doing the triangles, it's literally, it's like if you've got a bit of, if you're a child and you had some poster paints and you put a big, green triangle you've drawn on your poster paints, and then you've got your water brush and you sort of pushed it upwards. That's what I imagine, pushed up and pushed out to the side. It needs to fade to nothing in both directions, I would say. And the way to do that is not to have a flower at the top, it's to have a really tapering, delicate piece of greenery. Perhaps a Lisianthus bud might do the same thing, but you don't want it to be squared off at the top, too heavy. And the width of my arrangement at the top is the width of my piece of my garlic mustard and the width of my flower head. And it has kept, it's quite tight there. How many flowers did I use in the end? 5, 9, I think, main blooms I've used. So you could buy, perhaps a dozen roses and replicate it. And I've gone for minimal greenery, partly because needs must, and I didn't have a lot to hand. But it just goes to show that you don't need to have loads and loads of plant material to create a pleasing looking flower arrangement. Do I think yes, I probably overall do think they're quite heavy. They're visually heavy, the irises. But yes, it's needs must. But imagine if they were, as you said, a very clipped carnation or a rose or a gerbera. I think it's the simplicity in the outline of the plant material. These are quite large flowers and they are quite, how would you describe the shape? They're quite frilly, aren't they? Quite a frilly shape. So they are occupying a lot of space and they're quite busy to look at. But I think in terms of, trying to get that against my background, the principles I would look at in an asymmetrical arrangement, it's demonstrating the point. But would I necessarily choose irises again? No, I think I would choose a much more distinct, clipped, more geometrically shaped arrangement, because it wouldn't look so frilly. And of course, then you may well have the opportunity of adding in more flowers. So you could have your main flower being a rose. You might want to fill in with Lisianthus. You may well have Hypericum. You can keep adding and adding and adding. And of course, depending on the block of foam, the size of the block of foam you've got and the container that you're working in. So I'm going to wrap it up there. So thanks so much for joining me on my practice class. I think I am going to have to do a little bit of research about how I actually go live in the link. I don't think it is the link that I published. It'd be interesting to see when I've finished, but at least we've done it. And it may well be that when I share the link for future classes, I just need to share the link to the members group of the YouTube channel, and then it will just pop up. But all these things, I'm sure we will sort out in due course. But I'm particularly pleased that you could hear me okay with my microphone plugged in. So I shall say goodbye and wish you a happy weekend. And I can see there's a big red button I need to push that says end stream. So that's exactly what I'm going to do.